Today, we're going to be talking about three keys to victory for the Washington Commanders as they get set to take on the Green Bay Packers tomorrow. So before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, just like Jaden Daniels is going to be hitting Terry McLaurin, Debo Samuel, Zach Ertz, and many others for multiple touchdowns this upcoming season. And so in exchange for hitting that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Washington Commanders. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Washington Commanders Insider family as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it as we are talking about three keys to victory for the Washington Commanders as they get ready to hit the road to take on the Packers. And so, look, I think that the first key to victory against the Packers tomorrow is going to be winning on third down. In fact, I think that this is going to be critical, not just for this game against the Green Bay Packers, but really for the Commanders season, because I think that this is very important to just really execute on every single game out. And in fact, I just think that, the teams that eventually win the Super Bowl are teams that can dominate on the money down, which is third down, because right there, you continue to keep the momentum for your football team. You also seize control of the game. You continue to keep your offense on the field to generate points. And on the obvious side, you are keeping the opposing team's offense off the field so they cannot hurt you there. And so this is why this is going to be critical, not just for this game, but just for the entire season. And so I think that this kind of ties into what Dan Quinn had been talking about with identity and just really wanting to build off that. And so just looking at the stats from last week, you can see that the Packers were very good as far as getting the Lions off the field. In fact, just looking at those stats, the numbers 5 of 15 on third down for the Lions. And so they did a terrific job talking about the Packers as far as just really keeping the Lions offense frustrated and getting them off the field and just allowing their offense to go to work. And then when you look at the Commanders and what they were able to do in week 1 against the Giants, well, they were able to hold the Giants to 4 of 16, obviously the 6 points. And so that was huge because you're able to continue to get the 3 and outs. I think that the momentum was with the Commanders really all evening or all afternoon, I should say, in week 1. And so that's exactly what we're talking about when you're winning on third down. And so that is definitely going to be a battle between these two teams. Who can win the third down? Because I do think that this is going to be a game that it literally could be the team that has the ball in their hands last. And I think that there are definitely going to be some points to be had in this game between both of these teams. I think that there's going to be a lot, just scored in this one. And so next, I think point number 2 is going to be who is able to protect their quarterback the best in this one. And so I think that this is where we're going to find out a little bit more about the offensive line and its ability to pass protect. Because when you look at just what the Green Bay Packers were able to do in week 1 against the Lions, man, they were able to get a ton of pressures out there. In fact, they had 4 sacks, they had 9 QB hits. And so it's going to be a challenge up front. And this is going to be a bit of a chess match up there. But this is exactly why you go out and you get a guy like Laramie Tunsil. This is why you go out and you draft Josh Conley Jr. And this is why we are really loving where we're at with the offensive line as far as the continuity up front, because a lot of these guys were here last season. And so, I just think that you're building off of that. You've added some players that can certainly help you. And even though, Josh Conley Jr. gave up a sack and a half last week, I still feel very confident that he's going to be able to be just fine against the Green Bay Packers. I know it's going to be obviously a learning lesson for him every game out. But like I said before, he's a gamer. And so, that is going to be huge, with just which team is going to win as far as pass protection and as far as just keeping their quarterback comfortable. Because when you look at just Jordan Love and his afternoon against the Lions last week, look, he got no sacks and also he didn't get sacked any times, and he also had 2 QB hits. And so their offensive line did a terrific job against the Lions. And look, the Lions definitely have a very nice defensive front and a pretty good defense, and so for them to be able to hold up and keep Jordan Love kind of clean in the pocket, he was able to make some plays down the field. So I think that this is going to be critical here because, whichever quarterback is under the most pressure, that could really indicate that turnovers are coming. And also, too, it could indicate that that's a frustrated offense. And so the one thing that I love about Jaden Daniels is this, that even though you might get him with a sack, it's sacks to where maybe he's getting out of the pocket. He maybe stiff arms the defender, and it turns out to be just a -1, which obviously is a sack. But versus him dropping back and then we're losing 10, 12 yards with somebody getting back there as he's lined up as a passer. And so I like the fact that Jaden Daniels can really kind of, even if it is a sack, he can kind of lessen the blow of these sacks. And so let's see who is going to win in that battle, because I think that that's going to be huge for both teams. And so lastly, I think that the last point that just has to happen in this game is just that the Commanders are going to have to just win over the middle of the field. So I think that this is going to really, shift where, this offense is going to attack. And so just looking at Cliff Kingsbury and just the ways that he can really have the Commanders attack this defense of the Green Bay Packers, I think that they can be had over the middle of the field, because just looking at what they gave up last week against their tight end, and talking about the Lions tight end, Sam Laporta, he had 79 yards. And so look, Zach Ertz and Jaden Daniels definitely have a connection here. And I think that, look, he's probably going to have to depend a lot on Zach Ertz in this one. And so he had 5 targets last week, only came down with 3 of those. He did have the touchdown for 26 yards, but I think that you're going to need some more from Zach Ertz to really kind of punish the Green Bay Packers over the middle of the field. And I also think that maybe this is where Cliff Kingsbury maybe kind of calls a little bit of an audible here, and maybe you give the Green Bay Packers a little bit more of a different look as far as trying to get Terry McLaurin involved early in the short passing game. And so he's a guy that definitely, he can take it off the screens. I think that you can hit him with the quick slants and things like that. Maybe you have him going with some of the deep ends across the field and stuff like that, just to try to loosen the defense up enough to where maybe they can go down the field a little bit later. And so maybe that's a little bit more of a wrinkle that Cliff Kingsbury is going to throw at the Green Bay Packers. But I definitely think the middle of the field is something that the Washington Commanders can take advantage of. And so let's see who can step up. Maybe this is a game in which we do see a Jalen Lane, a Luke McCaffrey, maybe Noah Brown. But I do think that that is going to be critical for the Washington Commanders to win in this one. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking as far as the 3 keys to victory. Once again, like I said before, I think that the first thing is you have to win here on 3rd down, especially with just the situation going into this week with Tress Way and everything else. And so, like I said, we'll be doing another injury update around him, but it looks like that he is going to be good to go. But still, if he's a little banged up, you don't want to have to rely on your punter there, because well, that could cost you too, because if it's a bad punt or something like that, essentially it would have been better just to go for it. So hopefully the Commanders don't have to get into those situations. They continue to keep Green Bay on the field. They wear out that defense, which I think is going to be critical, and they're able to get some points. And so next, just talking about the sacks. And so I think that that is really where the game is going to be won. Which team is going to really dominate up front here. And so from a pass protection standpoint, it's going to be huge for the Commanders. I think that, look, the Green Bay Packers are probably going to give, I think, the offensive line some more looks that they didn't necessarily see against the Giants, really try to confuse the offensive line, especially try to maybe attack Josh Conley Jr. a little bit more to see if maybe they can rattle him. And so I think that that's going to be the battle within the battle. And I just think that whichever quarterback is really pressured the most, that could really maybe dictate who wins this game. And just lastly, going into the last point, I think that the Commanders can certainly really take advantage with the middle of the field. So let's see if Cliff Kingsbury is able to get really creative, attack the middle of the field. You also can use your running backs. I mean, because look at what Austin Eckler was able to do on that huge gain. I think it was like a 2nd and 15 or something like that. He made a ton of people miss and just was able to get some contact and get to the 1st down marker. And so this is a game where Austin Eckler, maybe Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt or Bill, maybe they're not anticipating that he can be a pass catcher. You have to take advantage of that. And lastly, I'm going to give us one more bonus here. It's going to be, you have to eliminate the penalties. That is my bonus before we jump out of here, because when you look at the Commanders, they were completely undisciplined in the penalty department. 12 penalties, 89 yards. I mean, you essentially almost That's almost the entire football field. So 89 yards, 12 penalties is not going to be good enough to beat the Packers, who are awfully good at home. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. We'll be doing a little bit of a pregame before the game. And so be looking for that video. And so as we always say, go Commanders, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.